All right, Buonasera, what's poppin'? It's your boy Big Rich, Queens, New York City, where we get busy. I'm telling you right now, if you guys haven't got runts yet, RUNTZ, go to your local dispensary, tell them you want the runts. It's just delicious. It's unbelievable. Gentlemen, wipe your feet on the rugs, bless the atmosphere, throw some smoke in the air. You know how we get down. It's your boy Big Rich. Team Ruckus. This is a team effort, huh? A lot of crying and boo-hoo going on behind the scenes. I don't got time for that. I got time for business. No, but seriously, good evening. I hope everybody's doing well. In the midst of a crisis in New York City, everything is locked down. The streets are empty, but my pockets are not. Blessed and chosen. Let's get right down to business. By the way of gangstersinc.nig.com. Salute to Gary Jenkins. The beginning of Tony Spilotro's infamous Hole in the Wall gang. Quote, I've known Tony since I was about 12 years old. We grew up together. At the end of 78, he called and asked me to come out to Vegas and, watch his back. Be his underboss, more or less. That's the term they use. So that's what I was noted for. The underboss and the leader of the Hole in the Wall gang. Unquote. Frank Cullotta. I love a story about criminal gangs. How they develop, how they work, and how they end. I think the story of the Hole in the Wall gang is as good as it gets. In the first of a 3-part series, the reader learns more about the beginnings of the men who will eventually start the Hole in the Wall gang. The big score. Every good thief wants that one big score. How many movies have there been made about the big score or the last score before a master thief retires? The first one I remember was the Thomas Crown Affair. But there have been plenty like Heat, Heist, Oceans 11, 12, and Oceans 8 with an all-female cast. What is your favorite caper film? Tony and his Hole in the Wall gang started stealing from the Sears stores and drug dealers, graduated to successful jewelry stores and fur boutiques. At the end, with the last big score at Bertha's Gifts and Furnishings, where they calculated they might find over $1 million in cash and jewelry. Bertha Ragland came to Vegas right after World War II and opened Bertha's Gifts and Furnishings, where she sold fine china and home furnishings. She eventually added a high-end jewelry store inside the home furnishing store. Bertha Ragland was a colorful and well-known successful Las Vegas businesswoman. Remember, this was over 30 years ago, and while credit cards were being used in Las Vegas, they mostly dealt in cash. The Cash Transaction Report, or CTR, was in use but widely ignored by many financial institutions until the later 1980s when the DEA got very tough on money laundering. It was a well-known fact to her employees that she did not trust banks and kept large amounts of cash and jewelry inside a store safe. Bertha will become that last big score of the Hole in the Wall gang. Casino business. To take you back to the late 1970s and early 1980s, remember Jane Byrne. She was the mayor of Chicago, and in 1981, she moved her family into Cabrini Green high-rise housing projects for 3 weeks. In 1981, the groundbreaking cop show, Hill Street Blues, based on the Chicago PD, was released. I was watching the Kansas City mob boys as they tried to regain some organization after the FBI served 1979 search warrants looking for evidence of hidden ownership and skimming from Las Vegas casinos. A Las Vegas mob associate named Joe Augusto turned government witness, a disgracia, and he will sink the Midwest mafia families. Chicago outfit member Tony Spilotro relocated to Las Vegas and started his Hole in the Wall gang. For that reason, I start with a look at the 1970s outfit. During this time, Anthony Accardo was the real powerhouse behind the throne of the Chicago outfit, while Joseph Joey Doves Ayupa was boss to all outside observers. From his modest retirement condo in Palm Springs, Accardo flew into Chicago to attend major sit-downs and mediate disputes. After the Kansas City FBI exposed the Midwest mob's penetration of Vegas casinos, the Chicago FBI continued with a muffling prong attack on the outfit as their connections to the Teamsters Union and Las Vegas casinos. Kansas City agent codenamed their skimming case Strawman, and they gathered the first real solid evidence of how the organized crime families controlled an important Teamster pension fund, an official named Alan Dorfman. called Operation Pendorf, Penetrate Dorfman. The FBI taped Teamsters official Alan Dorfman exerting control over the pension fund and other Teamster activities, conspiring with outfit capo Joseph Joey the Clown Lombardo, may he rest in peace, and others to bribe a U.S. Senator from Nevada and stealing Teamster money. In separate investigations, the Chicago U.S. Attorney and FBI agents launched Operation Greylord and then Operation Gambit to uncover and identify players in the outfit's penetration of the Cook County Circuit Court and other Chicago government entities. Chicago agents developed an informant who alerted authorities to a commercial burglary in Las Vegas. The subsequent investigation will provide one of the most valuable government witnesses to come forward in the outfit's history. Thieves and Friends. During the early 1960s in Chicago, a young thief named Frank Cullotta with another young thief named Tony Spilotro. They started as rival shoeshine boys, and as young adults, a 23-year-old Frank used his friendship with a former crime partner, a thief named Billy McCarthy. As a favor for the outfit, Frank lured McCarthy into a spot where he was kidnapped and handed over for Tony to torture and murder. During this time, Tony and Frank partnered on several successful burglary scores. For example, a 1957 bank job where they broke through the wall of the basement into the basement of a bank. In their first big score, Tony and Frank used sledgehammers, torches, and other heavy equipment tools and started on a weekend, so they had plenty of time to complete the job and get away before the bank reopened for business. Frank netted $50,000 for his end of that score, a lot of money in 1957. Frank and Tony used the same techniques until their last burglary together in 1981. So how did these Chicago outfit members end up burglarizing Las Vegas jewelry stores? First, we must understand why Chicago, Kansas City, Milwaukee, and Cleveland mobsters were in Las Vegas. During the 1970s, the outfit moved into the Las Vegas casino businesses after an agreement with the East Coast families to take over all rackets in Atlantic City. Chicago, being the leader of the Midwest cabal of crime families, led the way into Las Vegas. In preparation, in 1971, an outfit associate and well-known gambler named Frankie Lefty Rosenthal moved from Florida to Vegas and got a job at the Stardust. Later in 1971, 33-year-old Chicago outfit member Anthony Tony Spilotro moved to Las Vegas. Ayupa wanted an outfit member to watch Rosenthal's back and take care of any problems that might threaten the skim. Never fuck with the skim. Huh? I love that movie. In 1974, the Chicago outfit, the Kansas City crime family, the Milwaukee family, and the Cleveland mob organizations pooled their Teamsters Union contacts and paved the way to turn the real estate agent developer named Alan Glick to obtain a $62 million loan. Glick created the Argent Corporation and purchased the Stardust, Fremont, Hacienda, and Marina Casino hotels. In return, he was advised to promote a current Stardust employee named Frankie Lefty Rosenthal to a high-level job in the organization. In the following transcript from a federal trial, Alan Glick confirms to the media Rosenthal's place at the Stardust. Reporter: Mr. Rosenthal, what is your position at the Argent Corporation? Rosenthal: I serve at Mr. Glick's pleasure. Reporter: and can you describe Mr. Glick's pleasure? Glick: we don't have enough time. Rosenthal: that's a good answer. We don't have enough time. Reporter: do you see yourself growing with the Argent Corporation, taking a higher position possibly? Rosenthal: you will have to ask Mr. Glick about that. Glick: Mr. Rosenthal is as high as a position as you can have now. We all remember the Robert De Niro character Ace Rothstein in the Scorsese film Casino. Screenwriter Nicholas Pileggi modeled Ace Rothstein on the real Frank Lefty Rosenthal. Nicholas described his fictional Ace Rothstein as an arrogant, egotistical, ostentatious, flamboyant, and conspicuous gambler, just like the real-life Lefty. By 1974, Lefty Rosenthal was at his peak, and his outfit bosses demanded he produce them in return. Lefty hired several corrupt employees and started a regular flow of money skimmed from the four Argent casinos: Stardust, Hacienda, Fremont, and the Marina. Lefty set up an operation to remove casino cash before his staff recorded the count and sent it to Chicago, who in turn shared a percentage with the Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Kansas City crime families. You see? You're connecting the dots, right? A license to steal. The Chicago outfit did not pay Tony a salary for watching Lefty's back or for helping Lefty with any strong-arm tactics he needed to run the casinos. In return for his work, the outfit granted Tony a license to steal in Las Vegas. Working with the outfit is not like a regular job. It is more like the outfit grants a member like Tony a franchise to display a sign that they are a well-connected guy. And in return, Tony or the franchise agrees to pay a street tax of a percentage of each score they earn from any illicit activity they conduct. By 1979, Tony's friend and professional burglar, Frank Cullotta, was fed up with Chicago. He later related he left because crooked Chicago law enforcement wanted to take a chunk of his money and the good cops wanted to put him in jail. He accepted Tony's invitation to join him in Las Vegas. When Frank arrived, Tony told him he wanted Frank to put together a crew of Chicago guys and start doing jobs. He also asked Frank to be an inside man at the casinos because the Nevada Gaming Control Board had banned Tony by putting his name in the Black Book of Banned Persons. During the early 1970s, Las Vegas law enforcement, including gaming control enforcement, was not the most professional in the world. The Clark County Sheriff Ralph Lamb directed all backyard investigations into casino licenses. Lamb was an old-school Western-style lawman who ran a large family ranch as well as serving as the sheriff. He was known to meet the lower-level mobsters at the airport, rough them up a bit, and tell them to go back home. He claimed he once grabbed Chicago outfit mobster Johnny Roselli and slapped the cologne off of him. Lamb's department once stopped a large group of Hell's Angels and destroyed several motorcycles and gave the bikers haircuts before turning them loose. On the other hand, Ralph Lamb wrote a character reference letter attesting to the excellent character of Lefty Rosenthal in support of Lefty getting a license to be involved in the Florida racetrack industry. Being responsible for background investigations for gaming licenses was a huge responsibility and opened the sheriff's office to potential corruption. The FBI started looking into outfit corruption in the gaming industry, but they got little cooperation from local law enforcement. All local and state Nevada officials resented any intrusion on their jurisdiction. It was not that this was institutional corruption, more like a libertarian attitude against anything to do with the central government. Changing of the guard. In the mid-1970s, Nevada was changing, and they realized that Chicago and other eastern organized crime families had infiltrated the casino business. Informants told about the loss of thousands of dollars in tax revenue because of the skimming. When casino employees remove money before the official count, the state cannot tax the entire amount of casino revenue. Ralph Lamb was charged with personal income tax evasion, but would eventually be found not guilty. The bad publicity cost him the election in 1979. The Las Vegas City Police Department and the Clark County Sheriff's Office had merged by this time and were known as the Las Vegas Metro PD. A former Las Vegas PD sergeant named John McCarthy beat Ralph Lamb and became sheriff. During this time, the Las Vegas Metro Police will combine with the Clark County Sheriff's Office to form one department. A young lieutenant named John McCarthy will be elected to run the combined departments. The ranking officers under Sheriff Lamb had neglected the intelligence unit, and Sheriff McCarthy found it infested with corruption. McCarthy promoted a former vice officer who was known to be incorruptible in a sea of corruption. When Kent Clifford was promoted to command the Metro Intelligence Unit, this Elliot Ness found that most of his officers were a little bit corrupt, taking favors from strip casinos. He learned about who informed Tony about any law enforcement activities that might affect his or his friend's business. Clifford made an impression when on one of his first days in the unit's office, he found 30 to 40 cases of expensive whiskey, scotch, and vodka. He asked, "What's this?" Unit detectives replied, "The strip casinos donate that to us as Christmas presents every year." Commander Clifford replied, "Remove that stuff, and I never want to see anything like this again." Commander Clifford will soon transfer all the existing officers out and replace them with men he could trust. The National Law Enforcement Intelligence Unit's organization refused to share any information with the Las Vegas police. The FBI declined to work with them in any manner. The FBI had indicated a unit member named Joe Blasco for working with Tony. The police department fired Blasco. He eventually worked directly for Tony and became a member of a hole-in-the-wall gang. You know what they say, if you can't beat them, you join them. By 1979, Frank put together several of his old outfit comrades into a burglary gang. The press named this crew the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang because they often knocked a hole in the wall of a business to avoid alarms on doors and windows. They hit the homes of wealthy people in jewelry stores and fur boutiques all over the Southwest. They set up scores and completed scores set up by Tony. Frank ran the day-to-day operations of this gang, and he gave Tony a piece of every job. According to the usual outfit protocol, Frank gave Tony an equal share to anybody who participated in the crime. During this time, Tony ordered Frank to murder a Las Vegas resident named Jerry Lisner because he thought Lisner was an informant. Frank took another member of the Hole-in-the-Wall gang, Wayne Matecki, as a backup on this hit. Frank and Matecki went to Lisner's house and Frank shot him, but Lisner ran away and refused to fall. Frank chased Lisner through the house while shooting until he ran out of rounds. Matecki brought in more bullets, so Frank reloaded and finally got Jerry Lisner killed. Martin Scorsese depicted this murder in his film Casino. During the filming of this scene, Scorsese complained that it did not feel right. Frank was on the set as a technical consultant, and when he overheard Scorsese complaining, Frank said, "No wonder you're not doing it right." Scorsese replied, "Who are you?" And Frank replied, "I'm the guy who done it." Scorsese replied, "Somebody take this guy to wardrobe." In the irony of all ironies, Frank played himself committing a murder that he did in real life. Now that's gangster. During this time, the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang is hanging out at the Upper Crust Pizza restaurant and bar owned by Frank. Kent Clifford, the new commander of the Las Vegas Metro Intelligence Unit, transferred in young, aggressive police officers and created a partnership with FBI agent Emmett Michaels and his surveillance squad. They focused on Tony and his crew. Soon the officers noticed Frank, Tony, and other known hoodlums hanging out at a pizza joint called the Upper Crust. With their focus on the Upper Crust, it led to a disastrous consequence for one Chicago outfit hanger-on and a confrontation between Kent Clifford and the entire hierarchy of the Chicago outfit. By this time, the national newspapers noticed the presence of Tony. The Wall Street Journal named Ayupa and Tony as the men behind a strong move west by the Chicago outfit. The Gaming Control Board discovered Tony's ties to the Chicago outfit and forced him to sell his gift shop in Circus. Tony opened a jewelry store called the Gold Rush, a block off the Strip. He used his front to fence stolen goods obtained by the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang. The FBI and Police Intelligence Unit in Milwaukee, Chicago, Cleveland, and Kansas City served search warrants on mob leaders to uncover evidence of Vegas skimming activities. The FBI and Las Vegas Metro Intelligence started to tighten their noose on Tony and his Hole-in-the-Wall Gang with massive surveillance of the Gold Rush and Frank's Upper Crust restaurant. The gang is making money and attracting law enforcement heat. The next year will not be without incidents. We will hear about successes, failures, and what the fuck situations. All the time, Tony and his Hole-in-the-Wall Gang are doing burglaries and loan sharking while the upper echelon in Chicago and Kansas City are quietly taking millions out of the casinos. So first of all, salute to GangstersInc.com and Gary Jenkins, the beginning of Tony Spilotro's infamous Hole in the Wall gang, right? Part one of a three-part series. I want everybody to have a good evening. Like, share, comment. Let me know what you're smoking on. You know what I'm saying? Salute. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning, waking up at Ruckus. If you haven't checked out the show, come check us out and hang out for a little while. The whole world is shut down. Salute.